welcome to the Daily Atheist Morning Show. It is Thursday, the 10th of September, 2020. I am your host, the amazing Super Chris. Today, I've got my co-host, Andy Hall. He's here with me. Chris, the atheist pastor, had some sort of family emergency, and he's not going to be able to make it. Best wishes. I don't know what's going on. I hope everything works out for him. Chris is normally very reliable about showing up, so it must be important. So hopefully everything's going okay. I've sent out a couple of invites to other people who might want to join us and kind of fill in the spot with Chris. Otherwise, we're going to do the thing at the place for the people. You guys are the people right after this.
I got to do something for the sad, for the Laughing and Disbelief YouTube channel. Color. I like color. Color's pretty cool. Everyone's doing color. Color is stupid. I can't do color. I got to change it. No. Too much change. Bad change. Too different. Monkeys? I like monkeys. Check out the Laughing and Disbelief YouTube channel.
All right. Thank you to Andy Hall from the Laughing and Disbelief blog over at Patheos for that little commercial for him. That is awesome. If you're not subscribed to Andy, go check it out. Good morning, Andy. How are you doing?
Good morning. I am doing well, sir. I shaved my face. That's my top news story.
There you go. I thought something was different.
I look a little bit more mentally stable now.
It's just appearances, though, right?
Just appearances.
That's all appearances. Yeah. So good morning to you. Good morning to everybody in the damn nation. We got a lot of folk already stacking up in the chat this morning. P, good morning, P. Nice to have you with us. Slave, Chimera, Tons of Mice, Edward Chiriac. Nice to have you. Slade Chimera says, I was raised as a Christadelphian. Does that count as a cult? I'm suspecting it might. Oh, I need to get the poll off there. We don't know if Streamlabs is playing nice yet or not, so I should not turn on the poll. We don't want people voting. Anyway, so good morning to everybody in the chat. Let me see. I missed some people here. I got distracted by the words. The words were the good words. Joy Okafor, good morning. Derek Cruz, Tons of Mice, Dragons in Genesis, Ian Davenport. Good morning, everybody. Thank you all for joining us today. We like I said, we were going to have Chris, the atheist pastor. Something came up. It was actually his topic. He wanted to, and I get it. You know, politics gets old. I would wanted to avoid politics myself. It's fine. He wanted to avoid politics. I said, okay. And then I went and stole a topic from him. I went to his show and I went, well, last week he talked about cults. We'll do that because it's in his ballpark and he's ready. He's teed up. And so I don't know anything about cults.
You know nothing about cults? You have
not
no
really.
interaction with cults?
I know, don't drink the Kool-Aid.
Don't drink the Kool-Aid. All right.
Never drink the Kool-Aid. Go to any Christian event. Never drink Kool-Aid.
Never.
What else?
Never. So I have a few cult stories.
Okay.
From my personal interactions with cults. And I just want to start off with saying that you're going to be, anyone who knows me, has been watching this channel or my channel, you're not going to be surprised with how a lot of these cult stories have to do with me trying to get laid too. I know it's surprising for the man who stopped masturbating for Jesus when he was 13, that somehow my desire to have hot sex would somehow get merged with cults, and there would be trouble. There'd be horrible trouble that comes from it.
Horrible trouble.
Yeah. So, Chris, do you know anything about the Unification Church?
They unify stuff.
I like that. I like your saucy attitude and your wordplay, sir. So let me read you a bit from the Encyclopedia Britannica Online about the Unification Church. The Unification Church, by name, the Holy Spirit Association for the Unification of World Christianity, religious movement founded in Busan, South Korea, by the Reverend Sun Myung Moon in 1954. Known for its mass weddings, the church teaches a unique Christian theology. It has generated much controversy, and its members are commonly derided as Moonies.
Moonies. That's why you called them the Moonies earlier.
Exactly.
Okay, I was paying attention. I heard that. Okay,
you heard that. Okay. So how did I get embroiled with Moonies? That's
trying to get laid.
Right, exactly. And
you were trying to get your stick wet, and you got hooked up with a cult.
But the thing is, right? You may be surprised about this. You may be surprised about this. When I was really young, I just looked like a sucker. I just looked like a sucker.
I don't believe it.
Yeah, I did. So I was in London. I went to the UK when I was 19 years old. This is 1987, mind you, and this is relevant to the story. How long ago it was. So I was in London for a week. I was hosteling in London, and then I went on the British Rail for 2 weeks. I went up to Scotland. I went to Wales. And then I came back to London for my final week. So a full 4-week period in the UK, or at least, everything but Northern Ireland. So there was this video game arcade that I would like to frequent when I, was in London. And one day, after playing this great game that I loved playing, it was called Space Harrier. It was a game that I was able to flip. I could flip this game, Chris. I could just put a couple of coins in, and I could play for maybe 40 minutes. And I could just start from 0 and flip it back to 0. It was pretty much my only crowning achievement back in 1987. So, and back then we didn't have these. We didn't have these little handheld computers. So what I had, which just identified me as a sucker even more, was one of these little travel books, right? So it just said, hey, look at me. I look like a sucker, and I am a tourist too at the same time, which makes me the ideal person to recruit for a cult. Because the thing is about cults, they don't try to recruit everyone. They try to find the people who are vulnerable, right? To bring into their fold, right? The people who might be malleable or separated from their loved ones, right? So I'm 3,000 miles away from anyone I know, just by identifying with this, touristy book. So I am the ideal person to recruit. But I did not know this because I was only 19 years old and pretty stupid, even stupid for a 19-year-old, just oblivious. And of course, randy, if I'm going to use that term, horny, randy. And so I'm reading through my book, and this woman starts chatting me up. A very attractive woman, early 20s, the big brown eyes, the wonderful hair. She has it going. Asks me how I'm doing, and I'm going, well, I'm doing quite well, thank you very much.
Better now.
In retrospect, I should have all of a sudden my alert signals, my yellow alert. If we're going to go with Star Trek, the yellow alert should have been going off right then and there. But because I was so young and horny, I'm thinking more about opportunity than about, is this potentially dangerous?
Right.
What does this person really want?
Right.
But we start chatting, and then she tells me about this tea house, this tea house, this wonderful place, and it's a bookstore too. They just don't have tea and crumpets and muffins and all that other stuff, but there's books at this place, and it's a pretty cool place. It's where all cool people are hanging out at, and that's where she was going to, Chris.
Okay.
And I said, well, do you mind if I tag along? And you see what she did there was that she didn't even ask me to go along. She didn't even ask me. I asked her. Okay, so we get to the tea house, the Crumpets house, 1987, flock of seagulls hair. I had a lot of hair actually on my head. I'm just responding to tons of mice. I was in my denim jacket, my denim jeans. I had this Bob Dylan kind of vibe going on there. So we go to this tea house bookstore, and as she stated, there was tea. There were all the pastries. There were the books. There were other people there. And at no point did I perceive that this was a front for a cult, that this was well, she was a salt lick, I guess, right, to get me into the gingerbread house.
A salt lick. Yeah,
Yeah.
good. That's good. Carry
on. So we're there and we're talking. And, when I was like 19 years old, I was still, finding my way about religion, still kind of religious, thinking about Jesus. I was not an agnostic. I was probably some version of liberal Christian. That's how you would, a la carte Christian. That's how I was. But I was still a believer. And she wanted to talk about Jesus. And I'm like, sure, we could talk about Jesus, thinking in the back of my head, it's going to be weird if somehow talking about Jesus is going to get me laid. But, who am I to argue with fate? And then she talks about this particular church that she belongs to, the Unification Church. And I go, oh, I had never heard of them, because back in 1987, I had heard of the Moonies, as most of us had back then, at least somewhere. It was in the zeitgeist, right? But I didn't know that their official name was the Unification Church. And then she dropped the name of the founder, Sun Myung Moon. And I'm going to myself, well, you can't ask her if they're Moonies, because even then it's kind of like a slanderous term, right? But by then, I'm like really intrigued about the church, about her. I was in hook, line, and sinker. So we agreed I was going to come back the next day, and I was going to look at some of their material, some of their texts, and there would even be a little video I could watch too. And I said, all right, sure. So I come back the next day, I meet up with her, we have some tea once again, we chat. And then I go upstairs where there is I could watch this film. We're in little cubicles, and there was a monitor there, and they played me a film about how Jesus actually failed when he was down here on earth. Because what God really wanted Jesus to do was that God wanted Jesus to create a perfect family on earth. And only by creating a perfect family on earth could we all be saved. Mm-hmm. But Chris, I'm going to tell you something. You know what's great about Reverend Sun Myung Moon?
What's that?
He was the Messiah, and he was able to create a perfect family.
Okay, well, good then. That's wonderful.
And
hey, problem solved.
So he is the way, the truth, and the light. Not Jesus, but Reverend Moon. And that now that this is obviously true, it was only like natural for me to join the Unification Church. And I just want to say, I did not join the Unification Church. I've never been really this might surprise you. I've never been a big joiner. It's not just in my DNA, to tell you the truth, probably. But I did still want to get laid.
Of course.
So I saw the film, saw the video, agreed to meet up with her, probably like the day before I was going to go off to Scotland, because that was the first leg of my trip, was going up to Scotland. And so I meet up with her again, and we're just hanging out. And this is when she drops the bombshell. And I swear to my fictitious God, I'm not making this up. She is married. Her husband is like a 3rd-degree black belt in karate. And he is in a karate competition in Germany as we spoke.
Really?
And now you would think, now all of a sudden I realized that, well, there's no way I'm getting laid in this whole scenario.
I was curious. That doesn't necessarily preclude the fact that you might get laid, but yeah, I understand where you might start being a little downhearted about it at this point.
Right. Statistically speaking, the chances were getting lower and lower. But I was so intrigued by these people because, upon reflection, it's like they're Moonies, and I knew that Moonies were that people of this church. They were involved with these mass weddings, Chris, in Madison Square Garden. that the Reverend would just randomly pick people and say, you two marry, you two are going to get married, you two are going to get married, you two are going to get married. And that's what I knew. Now, the thing is, back in 1987, not having these little devices, you couldn't just Google that crap. Because think about it. If I could Google that while she was going to the bathroom, I would have just been like reading, looking. And, I would have known everything at that point. But I was so intrigued by this group. I felt like I had to stay engaged with them. So I went off for my 2 weeks trip up to Scotland and Wales, a bit of England, came back, and then I hung out with her a couple more times. I had a wonderful spaghetti dinner at their headquarters. I think it was Leicester Gate. I think it was around there. I don't know. It's been a long time. But I had this wonderful pasta dinner, and I saw the second half of Gandhi, the movie Gandhi. And she was really trying hard. And this is what all cults do, once again, is they try to separate you from your loved ones, from the connections that you have already cobbled together. And they want you to forge a whole new identity, a whole new series of relationships in the cult. So she tried to keep me in the UK. She tried to keep me there. And when she realized that I was going home, no matter how crappy home was, Chris, and home was pretty crappy, don't get me wrong, it was still better than hanging out with the Moonies, regardless of the free pasta.
Right.
Because
especially if you weren't getting laid.
I wasn't getting laid, dude. I wasn't getting laid.
Yeah, see, if you were getting laid, that would maybe make up for a little bit of it, but...
Yep. Right. Because there are, just as a tangent, there are cults who tempt people in with sex, right? They're just
well, I mean, that's how she tempted you that far, right?
That's how she tempted me that far. Right.
Led you along.
So she realized that I was going back to the States one way or the other. And then she got me to verbally contract with her, I believe is the behavioral term, for me to seek out the youth organization of the Unification Church in America when I returned. I said, sure. I was just lying. I had no intent on checking out the Unification Church at all when I got back, because there were obviously some weird sect of Christianity, which I had no desire to be part of, because I already had my crazy sect of Christianity being a Baptist. And so I wasn't about to shift gears and join a whole other crazy cult when I had my own crazy cult that I had, I felt comfortable with.
Yeah. It was yours. It may be a crazy cult, but it was your crazy cult.
It was indeed.
True.
So,
all right, go ahead.
I'm looking at the chat right now, and Slade is saying, flirt to convert. It's like, oh yeah, true enough.
Yeah. That's true enough. I don't know how often that works, but I guess it works enough.
Oh yeah, well,
go ahead.
It's a good way to market, your crazy ideas, right? You can ask any advertiser, you just add a pretty face to your product, and you're going to get a lot more people responding to it.
True. You said you actually had. I don't have any actual experiences with cults. All of my experiences are with mainstream religions. So for those of you who consider Christianity a cult, I went to the Assembly of God Church in Woodward, Oklahoma for a little while. They made me part of their sort of Boy Scout. They have this little Boy Scout thing, and they give you little emblems and low uniforms. It's very Boy Scout-ish. But that was about it. I didn't really.
Well, they
never got. Go ahead.
They put you in a uniform, brother, and that's part of that whole, indoctrination, isn't it?
Absolutely, true enough. But other than that, beyond that, I've seen it on TV. I've just never really experienced a cult or been a part of one or anything like that.
So this is a picture of Reverend Sung Young Moon right here. I don't know if people can see it. He does
look godly.
He has right. He's got his whole crown because he's the Messiah. This is the guy.
yeah. Well, of course he is. Yeah.
He is the Messiah.
Clearly, I could see that from the photograph.
Yeah.
It radiated through the webcam, his power.
Oh, I think
I may convert right now.
Right.
Lady Starfire says that she was in the Assemblies of God too, and she was a missionette. She hated it.
Missionette. That sounds like the worst girl band from the 50s ever. You can be like the Missionettes, right? With Jesus as the lead singer.
True enough. Good morning, Murder Shed Steve. Have you been on the TARP show, the Atheist Roundtable yet, Andy?
I have not. No, I've not been on the Atheist Roundtable.
Oh man, that's a lot of fun. You ought to get it. I'll hook you up. They kind of get, it's a small clique of people who all believe the same thing. I think they sit around and chant and whatnot.
Excellent. That's fantastic. But Chris, I got to ask you: is there a chance of me getting laid in any of this?
Well,
maybe. Oh, really? All right.
Have you seen Jeff play with his hair?
No, I have not. No, I have
not. Murder Shit Steve, that's for you. Anyway, fun. They're a great show. You ought to go check them out.
Yeah, definitely.
Tart is a cult. True enough. So you said you actually have 2 stories,
dude. Yeah, I do. And actually, that. So the first story with the Moonies, that was just a short snapshot of a part of my life when I was young. And you would think, Chris, when I was, years later, when I was in my early 20s, I would have smartened up a little bit, right? You would have thought that. But you probably wouldn't have guessed that I would be involved in a 3-year relationship with someone who was in a cult. Like, that would be crazy. Like, why would you do that, Andy? Well, yes. Once again, my desire to get laid and my fascination with obviously mentally disturbed people got me into troubles again. And I don't know how that isn't a recipe for solid, stable relationships. I don't know how that could be. So I was working at a gas station. This is just before I started going back to university, before I started going back to school. And I met up with this girl who came in to my gas station a couple of times. We chatted together. That was great. And I'm not making anything up here. We went on a couple of dates. We had sex. So first time have sex, I'm looking up the ceiling thinking life is great. She seems like a nice person. At this time, it's going to be different, unlike all the other people I was attracted to, and turned out to be a little wacky. So then she starts telling me about, at least this time, the hammer didn't drop until after I had sex, Chris. And that's the important part. So she started telling me about this seminar training she went to. I was just reading Tons of Mice. I was raised in a cult. They called themselves Presbyterians. Very good. Sun Myung Moon got kicked out of the Presbyterians, by the way. A little bit of trivia there. So right after sex, I'm looking up at the ceiling, thinking life is wonderful. And she starts telling me about this seminar training program that she's really into. And she went to this seminar in a hotel in Boston. And for the whole weekend, it was just seminar training about living your best life and learning this method of becoming the best person. It was some kind of variation of getting around the obstacles you put for yourself. And she only had to pay an exorbitant amount of money to do this training. And her dad's into it, and it's really cool. And I swear to God, right? My fictitious God, once again, I'm looking up the ceiling, and I just turned to her and I said, "This is the most stupid thing I think I've ever fucking heard." Okay.
Was that like a stop, drop, and roll kind of moment for you? GTFO, time to bounce.
It was one of those moments that I realized that if I was going to continue having sex, I was going to have to walk back that statement. And I was going to have to walk it back pretty freaking hard. So I said, well, okay, first, I'm sorry. I'm sorry for speaking out of terms like that. Please tell me about this wonderful seminar training that you're not just, this wasn't just a one-time deal you're telling me. This is something that is an ongoing thing that you're doing. And okay, well, tell me more about it. And she goes, well, it's called EST, Earhart Seminar Training. Earhart Seminar Training was developed by Werner Earhart back in 1971. It's basically a way of, just like most cults and religions, ways of squeezing money out of people, Chris, and forming these codependent relationships with followers. And there was the thing that you may remember, or that the people of a certain age may remember about Earhart's seminar trainings, which is now called the Forum, by the way. You might know it as the Forum now. They had to rebrand for some reason because people started associating EST with being a cult, which it is.
Gee.
But in the early days of Earhart seminar training, you would be in these very, very long teaching sessions, and you couldn't go to the bathroom.
Really?
You couldn't go to the bathroom. And if you raised your hand to ask to go to the bathroom, you would get berated. You would get berated by the presenter. Really? It was a cheap way of establishing control and domination over the people in the room.
No, don't let them go to the bathroom.
Don't let them go to the bathroom. They eventually did away with that particular, because of course it got out, people started talking about how the fact that, you're locked up in a room for 12 hours and you're only able to go to the bathroom maybe once in 12 hours without getting, verbally abused too.
Yeah.
So she was part of EST, which was transforming into the Forum at that point. And there are all these wonderful classes and a great community. And yeah, you would spend hundreds of dollars, maybe thousands of dollars if you took a lot of classes, which of course you had to take to become a fully formed human being, become the best version of you. And so I decided to start researching what EST was about. And I started reading books about him, and just seeing this Werner Earhart guy is just another salesman, another con artist. But I said, let me give this a shot. Let me see close up what this cult, what Earhart seminar training is all about. And so what happened is that there are these graduation ceremonies, right? So these people who go through the whole weekend class, they come out the other end, and the public is allowed to watch them graduate from their class. Now, the graduation ceremony is half graduation and half sales pitch. So, they start off with the opening ceremonies, and in the middle, that's when they really do the hard sell. They break you up into small groups. They make sure that you are separated from your friends, by the way, because I brought 2 friends with me as backup. But they made sure we were in separate groups during the hard sell pitch. And so the guy who was trying to sell me on the Forum, he came up to me and he said, Andy, if you want to keep this relationship going with Lisa, because that was her name, Lisa, I'm not protecting anyone. I'm not protecting the guilty, Chris, with fake names. Okay. I'm not protecting the guilty. He said, if you want to keep this relationship with Lisa, you should really join us. And I'm going, that doesn't sound right. That sounds unfair. So I narked on him. I went up to the Grand Poobah and I said, hey, this isn't cool. Whatever cheap brainwashing techniques you're supposed to be using on me, this seems a little heavy-handed. So I got him into a little bit of trouble. It was a crazy, and you might find this surprising too. The reason why we broke up was because she was taking a sex and relationships like 8-week seminar class, and she realized that maybe Andy Hall is not material for her in the long term. And to tell you the truth, she might be right. I may not be long-term material for anybody, but definitely not for the fact that I had the wherewithal not to join that crazy cult.
You know, I mentioned. Go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say I mentioned the Assemblies of God Church earlier, and several people, a couple at least in the chat, have mentioned that they were also in the Assemblies of God Church, and they had, goodness gracious, Lady Starfire, sounds like you went through a lot of things. Sorry to hear about all that. I didn't. My experience with them, and it was the Royal Rangers. Somebody mentioned, or I think it was her, also mentioned the Royal Rangers. Let me look up. Yes, Royal Rangers. I don't know if they still do the Royal Rangers or not, but indeed it was the Royal Rangers. But I was 12, I think. 11 or 12. I was too young for all the kind of thing you went through. I was too young for that. This was my time in where I was going from church to church to church. I went to this church for a little while, and I went to a different church. I went to one church for a while because every Saturday they would have baptisms, and they would have pizza. Free pizza, and they would give you these little Bibles. And, you know, there's something in me likes to collect things. I don't know. Sometimes I don't know why. If they give me, so I would go down and get baptized every few weeks and get me a Bible. And
how about that?
But other than that, none of it really ever stuck. You know, I never went to any. And then, you know, I kind of did the same thing. I went to a church here in Albuquerque with a girlfriend that I was looking to marry. I dated her for years. We were engaged for years. And I remember also going to church as part of the, you know, there's just a lot of things that a young man will do. You want to say for the love of a young woman. And
yeah, we'll go with that. We'll go with that.
You know what I mean?
With the rated PG version of this.
There you go. Because, just got two heads and only enough blood to run one of them. You know what I mean?
That's right.
So, but otherwise, you know, like I said, I didn't really have a lot of experiences with cults, really, like offshoot little things outside. Now I want to look more into the Lady Starfire says they've changed all the names of the kids programs. I need to look back into the Assemblies of God, because I just didn't realize there was that kind of thing. I wonder if they had any kind of scandal with the issues within their things. I don't know. I don't know enough about it.
Right. Well, you know, I've talked to a bunch of people in cults on my old show, the Naked Dinah podcast, and they all seem to have, once again, similar characteristics, right? Hardcore cults, they will control how much you sleep in a night. So they want to keep you like maybe 4 hours, 3 hours worth of sleep because you're more malleable after that. And they want to keep you busy for the entire day doing busy work, right? Working, you know, if you're out working in the compound, you know, you're out doing menial work. And when you're not working, you're listening to their propaganda, you know, whether or not it's someone preaching to you or you're hearing a recording or you're watching one of their movies. So yeah, it is unfortunate, but it just seems part of our primate history that we're cursed with this kind of alert cults. Right. Some of us are.
Can you remind me? It's been a long time since you were first on the show. Normally we talk about this when somebody comes on the show. But what were you raised as again? And when did you leave the faith?
I was a Baptist. I was brought up Baptist, not the treasonous Southern Baptists, because we all know that the Southern Baptists are the ones who are pro-slavery and separated.
Mitch McConnell, by the way, who's my understanding, is a Southern Baptist.
Of course, he is. Southern Baptist is the unofficial cult of this country. By the way, you know, us Baptists. If there was going to be an official religion, it would have been that crazy version of Protestantism. So, yeah, my mother was the church organist, choir director. My dad was an elder. He was a deacon in the church. And you know, the thing is with Baptists, as the name suggests, there's the full body baptism. Mm-hmm. And so when I was 13 or so, I chose to, because it was the time. It's generally around 13 or so that you decide to take a small course. I was in a one-on-one discussion with my minister over a couple of weeks about what it's like to be, what it really means to be a Christian, what it's like to be a member of the church, of being of the faith community. And then after that, I had a full body immersion ceremony in front of the whole congregation. It was an incredibly powerful experience. But that's, and that just shows you the nature of cults and religions in general. It's an irrational relationship between your midbrain and the organization. That's why it's so difficult to argue people out of a cult or argue people out of the faith. It's because, these churches intentionally, create this irrational relationship, this emotional relationship between you and them. You just walk into a Catholic church, Chris, and there's Jesus, emaciated Jesus hanging off the cross, right? Hanging on the cross. That's part of the Jedi mind, or the Sith mind tricks that they play on you, right? Because whether it's marketing of any kind is to create a emotional response, right, in you, and to channel that emotional response in a particular behavioral way to get you to do what they want you to do, because you're more likely to act when you're energized, when you have all this energy going through your system. So I'm back. I was Baptist. I think I've said it before on this channel that I'm bisexual. I was in a relationship with a man for 1.5 years when I was young, I was in my early 20s. He was not part of a cult, mind you. I just want to say that. He was just, So
you did that one just for fun.
Yes, I just did that one for fun. Yeah. And if anything, penis helped to deconvert me out of Christianity, right? Because how you see the play depends on where you're sitting. How you see the play depends on where you're sitting. Mm-hmm. So, and this is why it's so difficult to argue against white privilege with people who are white and privileged, is that you're arguing against where they get their bread buttered. But being part of a minority, being part of the LGBTQ community, or just a gay community back in the 80s, definitely opened my eyes.
They had gay people back in the 80s?
There were gay people back in the 80s. The AIDS epidemic was freshly baked. You could still smell it fresh coming out of the oven. I don't want to, I'm sorry for the dark humor, but you live through it, and so how are you going to deal with horrible dark things? You just try to make light of them. That was one of, and of course, once again, I've also talked about the seeds of skepticism had been planted in me for a long time. I watched Carl Sagan's Cosmos. You can't watch the original Cosmos or Neil deGrasse Tyson's version of Cosmos without really thinking about religion in a whole different way. So you thought of Brainbug saying, "I thought Obama invented homosexuals."
Right.
Well played, sir. Well played. So yes, we were mucking around for quite a while. So I would say that those elements helped push me into agnosticism, into I was like thinking about Buddhism for a while, like a lot of us were, and then I realized it was all bunk, to use the technical term. Yeah.
Well, since today we're speaking about cults, I thought it would be appropriate to go ahead and ask you, this is the show of shows to do it upon. How about that vegetarianism? How's that working out for you?
Well, you will notice that I'm obviously a very bad vegetarian cultist, because I'm not talking about vegetarian every freaking 2 seconds. So even though I am a vegetarian, and I've been a vegetarian since bringing in the funk.
Hey, what's up, guys?
How's it going?
Brought in some funk.
Pretty good.
So yes, even though I am a vegetarian, I have been since the beginning of August. I'm not a proselytizer. I don't go out there and food shaming people,
right?
Because I prefer to shame people for other reasons. Yes.
Car shaming. He likes to car shame.
Oh yeah, Chris. Yeah. Well, Chris and I were talking about his choice of vehicles, and so there was a bit of, because I shame people on so many different aspects of life. Why, vegetarianism is just something that it's just another burden
Too easy.
I would have to bear. And do I really want to do that? I don't want to do that.
Good morning, John. How are you doing?
Hey, I'm actually feeling pretty good this morning. Working on some stuff here, but it's interesting that I popped in when you were talking about that, Andy, because I'm attempting to go vegetarian, and I have been for about 4 or 5 months. I've been cutting back on the meat and everything, and it's been a challenge. It's been a real challenge, but it's a work in progress.
Do you have a significant other that helps you with this?
No. This is all part of my reinvention of my life. I started, I'm training to run a marathon. I roll jiu-jitsu and everything. And I stopped smoking cigarettes and stopped taking drugs 3 years ago. Of course, I still burn, but this is like a component. Yeah. This is just a component of my overall wellness here. And it really it makes a difference. Like if you're in your early 20s, right, it doesn't matter what you eat or do, you're basically invincible. But I found that on the occasions that I've slipped and I've eaten very badly, like I don't perform as well. So it's important that I continue on with this.
Yeah. So how old, if you don't mind me asking, John, how old are you?
I don't mind telling you if you'll take a guess first.
I don't know, dude. I'm horrible. Anyone as I get.
Try?
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah.
I want to try. You look like a dainty young lady of say 28, 29. Maybe.
That's pretty good. I'm actually 35. I'll be 36 here in November. So yeah.
At 35, 36.
All that olive oil.
And I don't want to panic you, but you're looking at middle age, or you're looking in a couple of years. And so, your body starts slowing down. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah, that's definite. I haven't really slowed down a ton, but there's a clear difference between my performance now and when I was 21, for example. It seemed like I was like infinite with my abilities at that point. Didn't have to train or anything. I was just invincible. But yeah, I'm fearing like 40s, I guess, as far as my performance level goes, but I'm on top. So yeah, there've been a lot of UFC fighters that were in their 40s, champions of the world. Stipe Miocic is close to 40. So, I'm not out of the game yet. That's for sure.
Oh yeah, definitely. So tell me about how you've been decreasing your meat. What kind of specific steps have you been taking? When
I go to the store, there are like two things that I focus on. I want to try to avoid saturated fat, and I want to try to avoid sugar. But when it comes to the meat, it's a lot of saturated fats involved with meat. So I've cut the red meat off, and I'm going like maybe about 1/3 portion that I would have normally used. Like when I make burritos or whatever, I use a fairly small amount, like maybe a few ounces of meat, and that's satisfying me. I've learned the tricks of putting beans with it and everything, because one of the problems is that if you're used to eating meat, it's hard to actually be satisfied and feel full if you don't have meat, So, but I found that I've cut it back. I don't know how long it's going to take me to completely cut it off, but I'm working on it. So from what I'm hearing, you're decreasing your meat content for health reasons. Yeah. Okay, cool. Well, there are a variety of reasons to decrease your meat. And see, now that Chris has gotten me on my vegetarian soapbox, but definitely
he brags about not talking about it. Then you can't get the guy to shut up. No,
but definitely worthy. You know what I found too is by decreasing the amount of crap in my diet, I am mentally more alert.
Right. Yeah. True enough. Well, that's my deal. I'm almost a diabetic.
Yeah. You're
I even sleep better.
Oh yeah, dude. I cannot eat a large meal before going to bed because I will wake up in the middle of the night and I have horrible sleep patterns when I eat just before going to bed. Chris, you're diabetic. You're about to be. What? You're on the cusp.
Well, if I keep working at it, effort.
We all have something to aspire to. Very good.
So they've got this. They've got this number. It's this number, and it's like 6.5 or something. If you're 6.2, I was 6.2, and I'm like almost. That's like pre-diabetic, but really I'm over the number. And you know, I mean, since my wife and I, let me put me up here. Since my wife and I got together, I used to drink a creamer, sugar creamer in my coffee. I'd get like one of those big, huge, fancy ones and drink through that sucker every 2 or 3 days. That's how much coffee and sweetener. And I'd eat bowls of cereal. I love me some cereal. I have not eaten a bowl of cereal in probably 3 years. Just hand over fist. Chocolate milk. I used to buy chocolate milk by the half gallon or by the quarter gallon in the fridge and put it in the refrigerator up here in our little refrigerator. And I would drink that like a quarter gallon of chocolate milk a day. I don't do any of that anymore.
Yeah.
And my numbers, I mean, they didn't continue going up, I guess. They would have gone up and I'd be really bad. But so, I got to watch what I eat. But also my deal is also about the treatment of the animals. You know, I'm one of those, I can't let myself think about things because I love animals and I empathize. I put myself in the mind of a puppy that's been kicked and is laying under the porch because it's, you know what I mean? Yeah. I can't let myself think about those things because it's happening right now. That's happening right now somewhere.
Yep.
Some little puppy's getting kicked or right. I just can't. Well, and then whenever you think about like the cows and the chickens and the pigs and the merciless horror that these creatures live through from the time they're born until the time they're slaughtered is unfathomable. Our species is probably, if we were to rate us, gauged by how we treat our animals, we're just horrible. We're monsters. We are. Oh yeah. So that's
I just want to bring this back to Christianity too. I mean, the idea about we're having cult of having dominion over the earth and over the plants and over the animals. It gives us this kind of idea that we can do whatever we want with the planet, and that's just is toxic.
Yeah. Isn't it interesting? I hate the idea. I didn't mention anything except for the fact that I empathize with animals, and it makes me feel bad because whenever I can't think about a puppy being abused by a human, and it makes me feel bad. That's all I said. A Christian in the chat says, "I wonder if Chris loves animals more than humans."
No,
why?
People are animals.
Where is the ugly in your heart that you would say something like that out of what I said? There's got to be some ugly in your person. So I don't care if you're Christian or not. You're just that's just ugly. Carry on. What were you going to say, John?
Yeah.
I forget, but what I just thought of was that, it's interesting that like humans are the only species that kills just for the sheer joy of killing and making our opponents suffer. So it can be easier to be more favorable toward animals, I think, because of the innocence. That's what we don't have as human adults, is that innocence. But, I wonder if the reason that they didn't put that in the Bible, seems like with religious texts, if humans are struggling with something or feeling bad or terrible about something, they'll make the claim that we have the God-given right to do that as a kind of ease. You know what I mean? So maybe that's what that's about, where it says that we can torture the animals. It says it right in the Bible. God specifically directed us to do that. It's kind of like a free pass, morally speaking.
True enough. And there was this conception until relatively recently that animals are just these robots that don't have any kind of internal life, that really don't feel pain or don't have relationships with each other. And so, and of course the research shows. I had Dr. Nathan Lentz on my show a couple of months ago, and he's wrote a book about how we gain our morality from our animal cousins, from chimpanzees, from other primates and everything. And when you look at how animals treat each other, well, they can obviously feel pain. There's no doubt.
Oh yeah, it's the same sensation we have, identical.
Exactly, and Dawkins has talked about it too, about how can we be moral and still do factory farming. It's the entire culture incentivizes us to be cruel to animals in a lot of ways, and it's tough.
There are alternatives. Thank you, Andy. I mean, Andy has encouraged me as I've been, because me and the wife have been. I found out Andy was going to be a vegetarian, and we already had veggie hot dogs and veggie burgers in the refrigerator. It's not like it was a new thing in our deal, but the motivation of seeing somebody else go that direction is, that's good. There's a lot to learn, and to do it for the health. Go ahead, Andy.
And I want to say, and I want to bring this back to atheism too. This is why it's so important to be an out of the closet atheist if you are able to do it. Because Chris, knowing me and having a friendship before this, suddenly finds out that I'm becoming a vegetarian. That increases the chances of him having a favorable opinion of vegetarians. And it's the same thing about atheism. If you can be out of the closet atheist, then do so and let people know about it, because that will help lessen the stigma towards atheists.
We have alternates now. The hot dogs, and the atheism, of course. I'm sorry, my mind is stuck on the food, man. My mind is stuck on the vegetarianism and the food. Some people don't care. They don't care what it tastes like. It doesn't matter if it tastes exactly. If you had 10 burgers there and they all tasted exactly the same, they don't care. An animal has to have been harmed. It doesn't matter beyond that. If it tastes the same, goes through the same, and doesn't matter, they still don't feel that they're taken care of because an animal hasn't been harmed. I know of a person, I'm not going to vilify them on the channel. We'll talk about it later. Andy, it's another fellow content creator here on YouTube. Another one of us atheist folks, by the way.
You know what is an interesting point when it comes to that whole morality thing and the chimpanzees is on YouTube here, you can watch this experiment that some zoologists, I believe, did. These scientists had two little monkeys. I forget what they were roost monkeys perhaps, but there was one in a cage and another one in a cage. There were two of them separated, and they started out by feeding each one an undesirable piece of food. You saw this. And at some point, the monkeys were eating the food, and they started giving grapes to one of the monkeys, which is a highly desirable food for a monkey. So one monkey was getting the grapes and the other was getting the less desirable food. The monkey that was getting the grapes actually stopped eating in protest because he thought it was unfair that the other one wasn't getting those grapes, and he refused to eat it until the other one was being compensated with those grapes. So I think that's a great piece of evidence that morality isn't a God-given thing for humans only. You know, that's the Christian argument with that we're the only ones that understand right and wrong. And of course, Christians will say that that's not an example, that that's something else, because I've tried it on them. But that is a good example of empathy and sympathy, and the one monkey didn't want the other one to be wrong. So it's just really fascinating.
Yeah, and you can find this stuff on YouTube. Just search for it on YouTube.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Absolutely. Isn't this the same one where the monkey who was getting the lesser item threw it, started throwing it at the researcher and said, "Hey, you're giving that guy a grape and I'm getting this piece of cucumber. What the hell?" Yeah, I don't blame him at all.
Yeah, so so there's the germs of our sense of justice. Yeah, right there in that study. That's fascinating. It is fascinating.
That's true, huh? Yeah. And, you know, I have dogs. I've got 4 dogs, and dogs are wonderful creatures. They love, they have empathy, they feel, they have dreams. You know, to treat these creatures, and how is a deer any different than a dog?
Right. I mean,
it's
I've had different conversations with hunters, and the common retort is that if you do a quick shot to the head, then that is more merciful than whatever fate they're going to meet out in the wild. It's like, oh, well, you know, I mean, it's better than factory farming, right? Of course, you might poison yourself with all the lead in the bullet, but you might be able to protect yourself from that too. I don't know.
Yeah. I don't know. Anyway, somehow we got onto the thing. All right, guys, I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up. Thank you, Andy Hall, for joining me. Thank you, John, for popping in last minute, for helping us out. I appreciate it. Do you have, Andy, you got anything coming up today?
At 11 a.m. today, I am scheduled to be meeting with my buddy Jack Materko on the Naked Diner YouTube channel, and we're going to be talking. We're going to be riffing on a cartoon about Nazis.
Gotcha.
And we're going to be doing a little news review, and then we're going to be talking about Nazis.
Wonderful. if you're not subscribed to Andy's channel, there's a link below. Go down there and subscribe to his channel. He's got some good stuff. John, man, you got all manner of books you've been reading. I see that. I got to be honest, man. There's not nearly enough color and space in the books you read for me, because I got to have some color and space. If there's not color and space, I don't think there were any pictures in the books. Were there any pictures? I didn't think I see any pictures.
I've got a great illustrated copy of the Da Vinci Code here. In this one, in the Da Vinci Code, as they're racing around trying to solve this problem, they come across a lot of different pieces of art, sculptures and paintings. A lot of Da Vinci's paintings are mentioned in this book, and if you get the illustrated edition, you can actually check those out as you go. So yeah, I
want the Braille version so I can.
So anyway, feel it. So you can feel something.
Chris, so I can feel something inside. I'm dead inside. Anyway, so all right. Well, that's cool. But I did see you have some reviews. You got some reviews.
So you can check out, if you're interested in fiction, you can check out my nonfiction or my fiction channel, Reading Funk, here on YouTube. If you're into nonfiction, I've got one called Nonfiction Funk, where I go through history books and whatnot. But I'll be having Jenna Belk, atheist celebrity, on my program next week, Atheist Incorporated, here on YouTube. And I'll be on Andy Hall's show next week as well. So don't forget to check that out.
I'm not a celebrity, but I'm a curmudgeon. That's how I'm promoting myself.
True enough. Well, thank you both for joining me this morning. Thank you to everybody, the damnation over in the chat. I very much appreciate all you wonderful people over there with your questions and comments and jabs. You guys are wonderful. Thank you to the people who listen on the Daily Atheist Morning Show live podcast. You're wonderful too. So tomorrow's Friday. We're doing Friday. Tomorrow, if the moon and stars line up correctly, we will have Andy Hall will join me as we welcome Nakasuchi as the Friday guest host. And then we're going to have Jim Majors, who's going to come back on our show and talk about how Donald Trump is the Antichrist.
I'm all a
Donald
tingle.
Trump is the Antichrist. I'm a Twitter myself. So I'm excited. So we're going to do that tomorrow. Okay, guys, you have a wonderful day. We will see you tomorrow. Take care.
Stay strong.